with regard to the content of the report on organization. And this particular complaint was that it had not paid sufficient attention to the matter, very important matter of the welfare of the veterans. And as I recall him, I apologize to the comrades if I misquote him. Yes, indeed, of course, we're interested in the NDR and the Freedom Charter and so on, but this matter of the welfare of the members of the veterans of the military veterans of the movement, this report has not attended to that. There were some discussions relevant to that issue. And my sense, comrades, was that it was raising an important question, which I hope will, among ourselves as members of the Liberation War Veterans, will discuss and resolve. What exactly is this Liberation War Veterans, this association? What is its purpose? Is this purpose, this central purpose is to attend to the welfare of the war veterans? Is that its central purpose? Because I got a suggestion that as one of the suggestions. Yes, indeed, of course, we're interested in the NDR and all of that, but this is the central matter. But I was very, very glad that Deputy President Paul Mashatile, in his capacity as that presidential task team, and Tamim Selek, address this issue, practically what is being done on the government side with regard to addressing this matter of the welfare of the comrades. I was very, very glad with the commitments that were made. And I'm quite certain that the comrades made, the Comrade Paul Mashatile, Comrade Tamim Selek, who made those commitments not out of as idle promises. It was a firm commitment to make, to say that indeed these matters must be addressed in the way that Comrade Deputy President Mashatile said, and in the manner that Tamim Selek also indicated. So certainly that matter of welfare is important, must be addressed, and will be addressed, as I was saying. And I'd like to say, Comrade, that I'm quite certain that some of us would be very happy to work with the leadership that you will elect on this matter, to make sure that it is actually addressed, consistent with the promises that were given yesterday. That's an important part of what the veterans should do. This Liberation of Veterans, this association should do, is to attend to this matter. But there's a second leg to it. Comrade has just addressed this issue. We took up arms, we volunteered to join Umkhonto Wesizwe in order to liberate this country, to make sure that we defeat the apartheid regime, and to make sure in the end that defeat will reconstruct South Africa on the basis of the National Democratic Revolution. That's another important element of what characterizes the nature of this association. That's what I think. It's in that context that I was very glad that the leadership of the war veterans gave me a few minutes to say something, is to talk around that part of it, this political part. I'm saying the welfare part is very important, critical, must be addressed. And some of us must be there to help in the process of addressing that issue. But the Liberation of Veterans must also address this matter, for which they joined MK in the first place. I've got my clock in front of me. Maybe I should speak only for 15 minutes. I'll try. I'm tempted, Comrade Wete, to ask comrades to raise their hands to this question. Does anybody here know anything about the Ossewabrandwag? I see 2 hands, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to ask them to come in to explain what the Ossewabrandwag is. very, very important organization. And I'll explain why it is such an important organization. The Ossewabrandwag was established in 1939. It was established as, they call themselves, an Afrikaner nationalist organization. But if you look at the logo of the Ossewabrandwag, the eagle, it's got a black eagle, wings like that, they directly copied it from the logo of the Nazi Party in Germany. Directly. The same logo. What is written there? This one is written Nazi, this one is written Ossewabrandwag. It's because the Ossewabrandwag was more than an African and nationalist organization. It was a neo-Nazi organization. Which is why even during the Second World War, members were involved in a sabotage campaign, blowing up railway lines and this kind of thing, in support of the Nazis during the Second World War. It's a neo-Nazi organization. Now I'm mentioning the Ossewabrandwag comrades because that is where this decision, it's not a decision, it's a point of view, whatever you want to call it, was taken that the African National Congress, the liberation movement broadly, is an enemy that must be defeated and destroyed. That idea that it's not only that like an ANC is just a matter of a political opposition with somebody with a different idea, but it's an organization which is an enemy. That's Ossewabrandwag took that position. It's an enemy of whatever the Ossewabrandwag and has to be destroyed. Comrades, again, I don't have the time. That was very directly the position taken by the Nazis in Europe against the Soviet Union. The principal strategic enemy of the Nazis was the Soviet Union. As a consequence of which, by the time we come, for instance, to 1944, 3/4 of the German army was on the Eastern Front. Only 1/4 was on the Western Front. Because the principal enemy of Nazism was the Soviet Union. That's part of the history that we don't hear. You hear about great contribution made by other forces. It's the Soviet Union that broke the back of Nazism. And the Nazis understood that. I'm saying that the Ossewabrandwag, that's why, comrades, one of the first acts of the National Party when it becomes government, is the Suppression of Communism Act. Because part of the ideology of the Ossewabrandwag was anti-communism. And the political educator of the Ossewabrandwag was the Dutch Reformed Church. Communism must be defeated. And the friends of the communists, like the ANC, must be defeated as well. The Ossewabrandwag got dissolved in the 1950s after the National Party became the government. But the members of the Ossewabrandwag became the leaders of the National Party. John Foster, Peter Lugwater, these are people who come from the Ossewabrandwag. And they come with this, part of their thinking is that we've got these strategic enemies that must be defeated and destroyed. The Communist Party, the ANC, and so on. So, you'll understand, comrades, why I'm talking about Ossewabrandwag in these terms. Comes 1994, the ANC wins. the elections. We had the numbers to run the country on our own. It was the ANC which decided, in order to make the transition easy, let's have a government of national unity. It was our offer. It didn't come from the other side. Not everybody among the apartheid forces accepted that change. Some people within that apartheid formation said the ANC is making a big celebration in 1994, but in fact they are celebrating, they've won a battle. They have not won the war. And they said, we will win the war. I'm saying these are the forces that came from the Ossewabrandwag, with that commitment already made within the Ossewabrandwag, that we've got the strategic enemies who must be defeated and destroyed. The Communist Party, the ANC, and so on. I'm saying that group said the ANC is celebrating a victory in '94, but all they are celebrating is a victory in a battle. We've lost that by that battle, but we will win the war. That, Comrade, resulted in the formation of an actual group, an actual formation. I'm saying whose mother was Ossewabrandwag. It had two strategic tasks: to defeat the ANC and destroy it, and to defeat the National Democratic Revolution. It said itself that when it said, we are going to win the war, that's what it meant. We are going to defeat the ANC, we are going to defeat the National Democratic Revolution. A specific formation that comes out of the anti-apartheid forces sets itself that task and has acted to implement that since then up to today. As we're sitting here, it's busy doing exactly what it said it would do. To defeat and destroy the ANC, to defeat and destroy the NDR. You'd remember, comrades, before '94, there was a commission formed headed by Judge Richard Goldstone. It was set up because there was this third force which was involved in a lot of violence, including the so-called black-on-black violence, as it was called at the time. And the commission was set up to investigate all of that so that it could be stopped. So at some point, the leadership of the ANC asked Comrade Sidney Mfamadi and myself to talk to Judge Goldstone about some matter, which we did. But there's one thing I want to report about that discussion with Richard Goldstone. He said that as he sat chairing that commission, one of the things that he learned, he had a sense of it, but could confirm it, that one of the things that the apartheid regime did very, very effectively was its infiltration of South African society with its agents. He said a very, very thorough job. Not only in the ANC and the broad movement, but in society as a whole. Whether you talk academia or take economy or you talk whatever, they made certain that they put their agents everywhere in South African society. Put in place a machinery that would be part of the effort that would be used in order to achieve the strategic objectives. It had set itself the counter-revolution. So when it said, we will win the war, What it meant is that we have put in place persons and institutions to get us to achieve that objective. It was not an idle boast. When we appeared as ANC, we appeared with the truth before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. One of the things we asked them, we said to them, in your work, please, can you help to ensure that the national security management system is destroyed, is disbanded? Comrade, were all of us old enough to know what that national security management system was. It was a system put in place by the apartheid regime it speaks for itself, National Security Management System. And a very important part of that system was exactly the agents that it had infiltrated into society. For instance, there's a small township, I'm talking about 93, 94, a small African township in George in the Western Cape. What is its name? I can't remember. Tamaletu. Now, that township, I'm talking 93, 94, had 93 agents of the special branch. The special branch only. In addition to which there were agents from military intelligence and national intelligence. Small African township, but flooded with these agents of the apartheid system. I'm mentioning that comment to say that was part of the structure of the national security management system in the African townships. A system of agents in all our townships were part of the national security management system, ready to be activated in defense of the apartheid system. I will come back to that just now. I'm running out of time. So, when the counter-revolution formed itself, I'm saying it said the ANC is celebrating in 94 because it's won a battle, but we will win the war. One of the ways it said it was going to win the war was to make sure that the ANC government fails. You remember, comrades, that at some point after liberation, the South African Revenue Service was outperforming itself. Every year the SARS would say, we are going to collect R1 billion. At the end of the financial year, it's collected $1.25 billion. It was always like that for a number of years. It was outperforming itself, SARS. Then around 2014, 2015, 2016, it started behaving in the opposite direction, underperforming. That is why Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, as President of the Republic, constituted a judicial commission of inquiry into SARS. To explain this matter, what has happened to SARS that is now underperforming in the way that it has? And that commission was chaired by Judge Nugent, retired judge. I recommend comments that you should read that report, because when the report was given at the end of 2018, President Ramaphosa released it in public. So it's there for the public, it's in the public domain. And what that report says is that there was a deliberate decision by some people to destroy SARS. And now bear in mind, comrades, that SARS is responsible for 95% of state revenues. If you destroy SARS, you destroy the democratic state. No money to pay civil servants or soldiers or anything. Without SARS, the state cannot exist. The Nugent Commission report says a deliberate decision was taken by some people to destroy the institution SARS. They didn't steal a single cent. When the Zondo Commission said, you saw now the big issue around the Zondo Commission was that there was a lot of looting, state agencies, this and that and the other. But I'm saying in the SARS case, there was no looting. Because the objective was to destroy this institution so that this ANC government doesn't have the means to govern. And that I'm saying the Nugent Commission report says this was a deliberate decision and then spells out the steps that were taken to achieve that objective of the destruction of SARS. It's in the report, it's on the internet, read it, comrades. That was an intervention of the counter-revolution in order to make sure that it wins the war by making sure that the ANC government loses. You've got the crisis around electricity. Again, I think all of us are old enough here to remember. The first national breakdown, the national load, what is called load shedding, that's a power cut, was in January 2008, when there was everywhere darkness throughout the country. Those power cuts had been occurring at a regional basis since maybe November, December 2007. But 2008, January, it was national. I was president of the Republic at the time, and so when I had to deliver the State of the Nation address, I had to apologize to the nation for whatever we have done as a government that's wrong, which has resulted in this loss of electricity. But Comrade Gwete, we apologize because we didn't know what had happened. What had happened, comrades, is this. ESCOM had an internal monitoring system. There was a rule in ESCOM that at each one of the coal-fired power stations, at each one, there must be at least every day 22 days supply of coal at the power station. The monitoring system within the ESCOM was to ensure that all of the power stations observed that rule. So from November 2007, this internal mechanism starts alerting the individual power stations that you are running out of coal. Replenish. You are running out of coal, replenish. They ignored it. The reason there was a complete power cut in January 2008 is because they ran out of coal. Deliberately, the managers at the power stations did not replenish. It was an internally generated crisis. And one of the immediate consequences was that, according to its own rules and regulations, ESCOM declared an emergency. And what an emergency meant was that now you don't have to tender for coal, you have got to buy the coal when it is. That immediately doubled the price of coal to ESCOM, overnight. It was deliberate, it was deliberately caused. I'm saying we apologized in February 2008 in the State of the Nation address because we didn't know this truth. This truth is dug out many years later by a special investigation unit, an SIU. An SIU was set up to investigate something about ESCOM. It was not this load shedding, some other issues. It's during the course of that investigation that they came across this thing. That report of the SIU was submitted to the president in 2017. And the SIU says the power cut of January 2008 was caused internally. The power station managers were warned, it says, to replenish, they didn't. I'm saying, comrades, then in the end, what some people in political parties say, no, that was power failure because of cadre deployment by the ANC. Nothing to do with that. It was deliberate intervention by the counter-revolution to produce a crisis so that this ANC government fails. I can talk about, if I had more time, with other elements of what happened to ESCOM. To produce this crisis, the crisis at ESCOM was not mechanical. It was a political intervention to produce a particular outcome. I've run out of my time. One of the decisions of the contribution, when it says it's going to win the war, was that it would intervene in the ANC itself. The first decision they took, comrades, was that they would intervene at the ANC National Conference in 2002. They were going to intervene in 2002 to make sure that the leadership that gets elected there is the leadership of their liking. And so you had some people within the movement already in 2001, year before, who were very busy mobilizing for that kind of outcome at next year's national conference of the movement. In the end, the counter-revolution decided that it was not ready for 2002, but it was ready for 2007. It acted in 2007 to produce the kind of leadership that it would prefer. You will have seen us just now in the last 2 days or so, this General Basane appearing before the ad hoc committee in Parliament, who talks about political interference in the police. He refers to this. He says this political interference in the police particularly happens after the Polokwane conference of the ANC. And he's telling the truth. Because that was part of the intervention of the counter-revolution to make sure that it achieves its objective of winning the war, whereas the ANC had won a battle in 1994. I must end there, comrade. It could intervene in the ANC like that because it could rely on its agents in the ANC. Let me jump to the 2024 national and provincial elections. You have this result, one of the results. A new organization called the MK Party suddenly gets this huge support in KZN. Gauteng a bit, Mpumalanga a bit. Why? And suddenly the ANC drops to whatever. Why have this population suddenly decided in KZN to abandon the ANC in these numbers? I had my own differences with the ANC leadership, provincials. But that was not why you had that result. The reason we had that result is because I'm coming back, comrades, to what I was saying about the national security management system. It was the activation of that national security management system which produced that result. Because that machinery had never been dismantled. I was saying we raised this matter with the TRC. The TRC tried. You go and look at the records of the TRC. The TRC tried to get into this matter, but couldn't produce any result. That was the machinery that was used to produce that result in KZN. You see its phenomenon, for instance, with the Gauteng hostels. You remember during the so-called war on black on black violence, those were IFP hostels. When we big clash with the ANC communities, IFP decide themselves. These were IFP hostels. But what happened in 2024? They all abandoned their IFP and went with the MK party. Why? It's because they are controlled by the same person. It's the same person who controlled them when they were IFP hostels. The same person who controlled them when they were IFP hostels is the same person who controls them today as MK hostels, MK party hostels. I'm saying, comrades, that's the counter-revolution, that's how it works. Let me end here. I've gone way beyond my 15 minutes. You have you have a mayhem that happens in July 2021. You remember that? Yeah. And the story that is told is that the people were angry with the ANC because the ANC had allowed Jacob Zuma to be sentenced by the Constitutional Court and was sent to jail. And the people were so angry, they stood up in solidarity with Jacob Zuma. It's a lie. A complete lie. What happened, comrades, was the counter-revolution decided to test its strength, to see whether it could in fact destabilize the country. It then acted, caused that whole mayhem, just to find out whether it could in fact paralyze South Africa for its own purposes. There's a very interesting interview given by General Roland de Vries. Roland de Vries, by the time we come to 1994, is the deputy leader of the army in the SADF. General de Vries. And General de Vries explains what happened with regard to those July 2021 events. He says that thing was well planned, well carried out. From such and such a day, it's a whole fleet of cars that were sent out to do various things. They even didn't have registration numbers to produce this outcome. And what it managed to do, it showed, this is what de Vries said, that actually this democratic state, including the police, had no capacity to defend democratic South Africa. That's what they were trying to test. And then in order to cover up this story, the legend, they attached to this counter-revolutionary intervention, oh no, it was angry people in defense of Jacob Zuma. It's a lot of rubbish. There was no such thing. It was a deliberate intervention by the counter-revolution to test its capacity. If we wanted to paralyze South Africa, can we do it? And Roland de Vries says, yes, they did. They showed that they could. Comrades can again look at that interview by Roland de Vries is on the Biz News channel. You can check it and listen to him. where he says this was well planned. The comrades coming from Devon, you might remember that the comrades, I've got some of our comrades, who now live in the traditional white suburbs. And during that whole commotion, they found that they couldn't access their own homes because the roads into the traditional white suburbs, they had roadblocks. And the people manning the roadblocks were white men carrying military rifles. So you had to produce your own identity, and it's not police, they were not police or army, it's white residents, male white residents carrying military rifles. You know who those people were? Those were the commandos. The old commandos of the SADF that never got dismantled. That's why they're carrying military rifles. They're military formations of the old commandos who were part of the national security management system, were never dismantled. That's why they surfaced in July 2021 in Durban. Communists, that's just another example. So there are many things that we can say about this. A comrade, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, yesterday said one of the things that we must do, and he was quite right, one of the things that we must do with our economic recovery is beneficiation. We must beneficiate all of these raw materials we produce. It was very, very correct. But if he had asked me whether I agree with it, I would have said, yes, Committee President, I agree with you. But you should add to that commitment. The electricity will be available. You can't beneficiate without electricity. You can state this wish about beneficiation. It will remain a wish if you don't have the electricity. ESCOM currently, all of us are very happy. The load shedding thing is over. But if you picked up the rate of growth of the South African economy, let's say by 1.5%, we'll run out of electricity. That extra capacity to feed into a growing economy doesn't exist. We talk about keeping up with modern technology, like artificial intelligence, like data centers. All of that, comrades, requires huge volumes of electricity. We can speak as loudly as we like here about, but when you be part of the artificial intelligence thing, modern technology, if we don't have the electricity, we can't do it. I'm saying ESCOM as it stands today doesn't have the capacity to do that additional thing which this growing economy would demand. I'm raising it, comrades, because there is a possibility to address that shortfall in ESCOM quite quickly, to make sure that it does not become an obstacle to these higher rates of growth which Comrade Paul Mashatile was talking about. But that is being blocked. The capacity to act on that matter is being blocked by ourselves. We are blocking the capacity for ESCOM to have the generating capacity increased as quickly as possible so as to meet that kind of demand. And I'm quite sure that wherever the counter-revolution is sitting, is saying, well done. Even this question, comrades, of the national dialogue that we raised, the counter-revolution doesn't want the national dialogue to take place. They are dead opposed to it. Because they know that when the masses of our people get on their own to decide the future of the country, they can't be intimidated by anybody, or what, or anything. The outcome of the national dialogue would be a sovereign outcome of the masses of our people. Counter-revolution doesn't want that. And therefore, national dialogue must not take place. We've got to make sure it takes place, because we can't allow that the country continues to be dictated to by the counter-revolution. Comrade Chair, I want to make a request that this new leadership that we will elect should really do me the favor to ask me to come back after that to discuss more this issue of the counter-revolution and what it means. Because, comrades, what the counter-revolution is predicting is that the ANC will cease to exist within 5 years. I take that threat seriously. They have demonstrated their capacity to do enormous damage. We must make sure that this prediction of theirs fails. And we need all of your involvement in ensuring that we must defeat the counter-revolution. That must be one of the tasks of the liberation of veterans. But thanks a lot, comrades.